Hello friends, brace yourselves. It's happened. Russia has gone ahead and shut the final gas valve supplying Europe. Just like that, Gazprom has fully and definitively stopped gas deliveries to Austria. And here's the most striking part. Europe itself pushed the situation to this point and is now stunned by the outcome. Today I'll explain how half a century of partnership collapsed almost overnight and why Russia no longer intends to provide Europe with cheap gas. Stay with me until the end. So what exactly unfolded last Saturday? Gazprom completely halted gas supplies to Austria. Zero volumes. Not a single cubic meter. Russia's longest-standing partner in Western Europe was left without blue fuel. Do you grasp the scale of this? This isn't merely a contractual disagreement. It marks the end of a 50-year relationship. Since 1968, gas had flowed to Austria without interruption. Through the Cold War, through the fall of the Soviet Union, through countless crises. And now it's over. The pipeline stands empty. Gazprom Export issued a brief notice, deliveries reduced to zero. The formal reason cited was non-payment, but that's only the surface. This is far more than an unpaid invoice. It's a geopolitical fracture. Europe and Russia are definitively parting ways. The bridges are burned. How did it come to this? And who bears responsibility? Let's trace the sequence of events. Back in November, the Stockholm Arbitration Court issued its ruling. European judges sided with Austria's OMV and declared Russia's demand for payment in rubles unlawful. You'll recall that in 2022 Moscow introduced ruble settlements after Western countries froze Russian assets and imposed sweeping sanctions. The Kremlin's logic was straightforward. If our funds are blocked, payments must be made in rubles. Stockholm rejected that reasoning. Moreover, the court imposed a €230 million fine on Gazprom, roughly equivalent to a month's gas deliveries. And this is where things took a sharp turn. Austrian representatives took an aggressive stance, stating they would not pay and would instead offset the fine against ongoing gas payments. In simple terms, they intended to continue taking gas without transferring money until the balance was cleared. An unusual interpretation, to say the least. According to that logic, gas could be consumed without payment under the cover of a court ruling. Moscow's response was swift and uncompromising. Gazprom stated plainly, the era of subsidizing the European economy is over, especially amid what Russia considers an economic war. The formula was simple: no payment, no gas. Any unilateral attempt to change settlement terms constituted a direct breach of contract. And with that, the valve was closed. Instead of volumes, Austria saw zeros at its distribution hubs. Moscow declared the Stockholm ruling politically motivated and legally flawed. Russia made it clear it would not engage in charity. The dispute was transferred to arbitration in St. Petersburg, bypassing Western courts altogether. The message was unambiguous. Those wishing to do business with Russia must accept its rules and jurisdiction. How did Vienna react? Officially, with composure. Chancellor Karl Nehammer reassured the public that Austria would get through the winter. Underground gas storage facilities are reportedly 93% full. We won't yield to Putin's pressure, he said confidently. Strong words. But let's examine the reality. Gas storage is not an endless reservoir. As pressure drops, extraction becomes increasingly difficult and slower. Energy analysts warn that consumers are facing a shock. Gas prices are likely to surge, and electricity costs could rise dramatically. Why? Because Austria relied on Russian gas for around 80% of its supply. 80%. Replacing that volume quickly is neither technically nor logistically feasible. What alternatives exist? Austria will be forced to purchase liquefied natural gas on the global market. But here lies another problem. It must compete with China, India, and Japan, all bidding aggressively for LNG cargoes. Austria also lacks direct access to the sea, meaning LNG must be transported via Germany or Italy, whose infrastructure is already stretched. Economists predict inflationary pressure and a loss of industrial competitiveness. Chemical plants, metallurgy, fertilizer production, entire sectors built on affordable energy are now at risk. Some companies may shut down or relocate to the United States or Asia. This is what happens when political decisions override economic logic. What about Russia's losses? Austria generated roughly $25 billion annually in gas revenues. Significant, Yes, but not decisive. Moscow anticipated risks in the European direction years ago and made a strategic choice: pivot east. That strategy is now bearing fruit. While Europe erects barriers, Gazprom expands routes toward Asia. China has become a priority partner. The Power of Siberia pipeline is already operational. In 2023 alone, more than 20 billion cubic meters were delivered, with volumes continuing to grow. Negotiations on Power of Siberia, too, are accelerating, redirecting West Siberian gas, once destined for Europe, toward China. And it's not just China. Russia is deepening cooperation with the Global South. Gas swap arrangements with Iran are under discussion, potentially allowing Russian gas to reach Pakistan and India, markets with billions of consumers. In this context, losing Austria is a tactical setback within a broader strategic advance. In Moscow, officials are confident Austria will fade from relevance faster than Vienna can secure a reliable replacement. But how did a partnership of this longevity unravel? Austria was the first Western European country to sign a gas agreement with the USSR in 1968. For decades, supplies were uninterrupted. The Baumgarten hub symbolized stability and mutual benefit. Now, in late 2025, that artery has been severed. Europe's energy security framework has collapsed. The turning point came in 2022, when the conflict in Ukraine escalated. Energy ties were dismantled one after another. The ruble payment requirement became the central obstacle. It was not a political weapon, but a protective measure against asset freezes. Russia's stance was clear: real resources would not be exchanged for currencies vulnerable to seizure at the push of a button in Washington or Brussels. European elites were unprepared for this shift. Accustomed to setting the rules, they were confronted with a new reality. Moscow said no, and insisted on parity. What does this mean for Europe? Zoom out and look at the bigger picture. We're witnessing the fragmentation of the global energy market. A unified system is giving way to blocks. On one side, the Western alliance depends on expensive imports from the US and its partners. On the other, an emerging Eastern coalition, Russia, China, Iran, OPEC states, is building a self-sufficient energy architecture with pricing independent of Western political influence. In this structure, Russia is not merely a supplier but a key architect. LNG projects in Yamal and Sakhalin provide flexibility, allowing shipments to flow wherever prices are highest: Asia, Africa, Latin America. In such a market, energy blackmail loses its power. The buyer's market has transformed into a seller's market, and Europe is realizing this too late. NATO analysts have already acknowledged the unintended consequences. Cutting off Russian energy did not collapse Moscow's economy. Instead, Europe is losing industry and competitiveness. The coming winter will test European unity. Cold apartments can be tolerated. Cold relations between allies may endure far longer. Looking at the empty pipelines of Baumgarten, it becomes clear: Gazprom's decision is not about revenge. It represents a new reality. In a world where contracts are overridden by politics and assets are frozen under sanctions, compromise becomes impossible. Austria made its choice. Once proud of its neutrality, it is now bound by European solidarity. Its leadership supported the sanctions course and cornered itself. Any move now worsens the situation. Vienna gambled with energy security and lost. Moscow accepted the challenge calmly, closed one chapter, and turned east, toward a new economic horizon. The Stockholm arbitration set a precedent, but not the one Europe anticipated. It demonstrated the diminishing influence of Western legal institutions. Should Russian courts bar proceedings abroad, that influence may erode further. So what are the conclusions? The gas dispute involving OMV is a microcosm of a larger global confrontation. What's at stake isn't just profit, but sovereignty and the future world order. This moment will be remembered not merely as the day a valve was closed, but as the day a long-held illusion collapsed, the belief that economics could exist separately from politics. You cannot wage a sanctions war and expect uninterrupted access to your opponent's resources. The rules have changed. Russia has shown it will no longer play a one-sided game. Want gas? Accept the terms. Pay as agreed in rubles. Don't want to? That's your choice, but there will be no gas. Simple math. Austria's experience will serve as a warning to other European states. Sanctions come with consequences: higher costs, deindustrialization, and energy insecurity. Meanwhile, Russia continues to develop new routes, expand markets, and strengthen ties beyond the Western sphere. The world is shifting, and the events in Austria are just one symptom of deeper tectonic changes. That's all for today. Remember, the gas tap wasn't closed out of spite. It was a business response to a proposal to take gas without payment. Russia demonstrated it will not subsidize those who have declared an energy war against it. The months ahead will show whether Europe adapts or pays the price for political ambitions. Subscribe to stay informed. We cover what others prefer not to discuss. Take care.